Gazprom is at the ready. It is the German partners that is not taking the Russian gas, because they have their orders from Brussels and from Berlin not to accept the Russian natural gas. A ban. That's it. Let us continue. Next, please. MENA Agency, Egypt. The Middle Eastern Information Agency. Shukra Taref. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for inviting me to take part in this dialogue. My question is, what is your view of the role of President al-Sisi in establishing stability in the Middle East? What role can Egypt and Russia play in order to de-escalate the tensions in the Middle East? President al-Sisi is our good friend. I have good personal relations with him, and it helps us develop bilateral links. We have stable volume of trade, and we have good prospects for the future. We have major joint projects. For many years we've been talking about establishing the Russian Technological Park in Egypt, in the Nile Valley, and we're currently actively working to implement the project of the construction of a nuclear power plant in Egypt. And I hope that it's currently 2026, and by 2028 the first energy block of the NPP will be launched. We're working very actively on this track. We attract a great number of local professionals and specialists in construction. This is a major project. We actively work in other areas as well. We have trusting relations in the area of political cooperation and international cooperation. We highly appreciate the efforts of President al-Sisi to settle all the situations in the Middle East. Currently, against the backdrop of the events taking place around Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, we forgot about the tragedy of Palestine, but it is still there. It is still there. And the President of Egypt has always made a great contribution trying to find a just settlement for the problems related to Palestine. And naturally, I would like to emphasize the Russian Federation believes that the fundamental solution to this issue is the establishment of a full-fledged Palestinian state. I know that the President of Egypt is actively involved in the agenda related to
हमजा, बालकनी में प्लांट्स को सेट कर दो।
वो तो माली सेट कर देगा ना।
अरे वाह, मैं तुम्हारी प्रमोशन के लिए खुद को नए घर, नए शहर में सेट करूं। तुमसे 4 गमले सेट नहीं हो रहे यार।
कहना था जो कुछ भी तुझसे, भूल ये हुई है मुझसे, थोड़ा सा कुछ दिल में रह गया।
क्या करो?
सेट करो, खास चाय बना के तुम्हारा मूड।
समझते हैं एक दूसरे को, इसीलिए बने हैं एक दूसरे के लिए। जैसे चाय को समझे सिर्फ नेस्ले एवरीडे।
चाय अच्छी बना लेते हो।
वैसे वीकेंड पे माली का काम भी कर लेता हूँ।
From Nestle.
Agency. Thank you for your hospitality. Mr. President, my question is related to the Ukrainian issue. What is stopping us from achieving long-term peace in Ukraine? What are the obstacles for discussing all the legitimate concerns of Russia related to the conflict? We can see, and you have mentioned that there has been progress, but it takes a very long time. It goes very slowly, especially speaking of Donbass. We have seen numerous attacks on both sides. Isn't this the moment when we must achieve a ceasefire and go to the negotiation table and discuss all the matters? Perhaps the European Union and the European countries under these circumstances, cannot serve as intermediaries, but they can help. They could help in finding a solution to this issue. Thank you very much. I believe that, yes, it is true. The European Union could try and help us find a solution. I believe that the solution shall lie within the framework of the agreements reached in Anchorage. The Ukrainian side is very well aware of that. There is one more point. Back then and before Anchorage, Russia was asked whether we were ready to accept a number of compromises.
And I remember when I came with a visit to Anchorage, I told President Trump that we were ready, and I gave him the details about the agreements and these compromises that we could reach. They should be accepted by the Ukrainian side. That's what is important. But you have to take into account the domestic policy situation. I don't think that Kiev is ready for it. If we achieve peace there, the fight for power in this country, the economic situation against this backdrop, all this will change radically. And I think that the authorities are not interested really in the cessation of hostilities, because then people in power would hardly receive any prospects of staying in power. You have to also address economic issues. European experts know that we're talking about hundreds of billions of euros that Ukraine requires to recuperate economically. We know about the proposals of the German Chancellor that Ukraine has to become an associated member of the EU. It does not concern us. We would mind if the EU turns into a military bloc. That is what causes concern. But when we're talking about economic integration, associations, we don't mind. But European experts know what the cost of such an association would be. And European agriculture experts know that if Ukrainian agricultural produce goes to European markets, they know what the result would be. I can delve into this topic, but going back to your question, I can say the following. Of course, the European Union can play a role, but not by supplying weapons to Ukraine, but by trying to make Ukraine reach a compromise that we talked about in Anchorage. Azerbaijan, Vugar Aliyev, Director General of Azertaj. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your time. I'm going to ask a question about the relations between Russia and Azerbaijan. How would you assess the prospects of relations between Russia and Azerbaijan? I think that our ties, our relations are good. They're friendly, and they have been friendly, always. I'm talking about the economy, about politics. A couple of years ago, we signed a strategic cooperation treaty, and we are developing our relations. President Aliyev makes great efforts to fill this treaty with substance, and we see that in certain areas of our cooperation. I think that we have aggregated investment to the tune of $10 billion. And we have a lot of enterprises with Russian capital working in this country. We closely cooperate in the humanitarian domain, and there is a large number of Azerbaijani nationals working in our country, and they make remittances to their country, and we are trying to organize it in a civilized manner. There are a lot of issues, matters that are of mutual interest. In logistics, we know about the North-South International Transport Corridor. Of course, it has now slowed down because of the events in Iran, but it is of mutual interest to both countries, and we're very thankful to President Aliyev for providing assistance in sending humanitarian aid to Iran. The Azerbaijani side has demonstrated its efficiency in this regard and responded to our requests. It is very important, it was very important to mitigate the situation. Our trade turnover is on the rise. New avenues are emerging to supply goods, commodities. There are some areas that I think we cannot talk about yet. I'm talking about the energy sector first and foremost. I'm going to meet President Aliyev and we will talk about it in detail. I think that the two countries are establishing the relations in a positive manner. Thank you very much. Colleagues, who's next? Kyrgyzstan, the Kabar Agency. Mr. Shemirtaliyev, thank you very much. Mr. Kondrashov, Mr. President, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Perfect air freshener. Raho khushboo mein.
Mr. President, the President of Kyrgyzstan said many times that the Central Asia should become a region of peace and live in good neighborly relations with everyone. The selection of Kyrgyzstan to the UN Security Council was a very important event for our country and for the whole region. In your opinion, what role can be played by the Central Asia in strengthening the international security in the upcoming years? This year, Bishkek hosts the SCO summit amidst growing challenges and instability. What joint initiatives within the SCO are priority initiatives Russia thinks for strengthening the regional stability, security, and what can Russia propose? What initiatives can it propose during the summit? As for our initiatives that we can put forth during the summit, we're going to be aiming or be guided by the initiatives of Kyrgyzstan, that is the host country of the summit. We know that the president of Kyrgyzstan and all our colleagues are hard at work thinking about it. Our competent government bodies are in close contact. Our foreign ministries, our economic agencies are closely cooperating and they're coordinating these processes, and I'm confident that necessary compromises will be reached. Generally speaking, we hope that it's not going to be about words only, but there will be progress. The association was first established as a tool for addressing border areas issues between the People's Republic of China and the former Soviet republics bordering with China, but I think it's now made up of 27 countries. It's a very serious association. We are engaged in serious efforts aimed at economic integration. Maybe Not everyone has noticed it, and it is an important factor in regional affairs. 27 countries, just think about it. It's a very serious matter. Important is that the Central Asia, with all its resources, with its vast territories, with the growing populations, the Central Asia increasingly attracts the attention of the international community. Because, first and foremost, it has a vast economic potential, and everything that is now being done within the organization will of course be of interest to both Russia and our partners. And we wish every success to our Kyrgyz friends, and we will be doing everything in our power to make our contribution to make this summit take place successfully. France and Great Britain. Let's start with France. The France Press main managing editor, Birasay. Please, you have the floor. Good evening, Mr. President. I have a short question with regard to Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky, the economy is going to touch upon it. We see that there are certain difficulties because military expenditures have grown because of the special military operation. Is it possible that the Russian economy will withstand these difficulties? My second question is about Mr. Zelensky. If you are going to negotiate with him to sign a peace treaty, what would you say to him? And do you think that he's a legitimate leader of Ukraine? Whether Mr. Zelensky is a legitimate representative of Ukraine, I would say that lawyers should deal with this issue, should answer this question, should analyze this in detail. Of course, if we reach this stage of signing documents, it's not our whim. You understand? Any country in our position should sign documents of this kind these are historic documents we're talking about. So we should sign these documents with legitimate representatives in accordance with the basic law, with the constitution of the party. We're talking about Ukraine in our case. Of course, this is an issue that will be painstakingly studied by future analysts. And I've talked about it at length already, repeatedly. 2 years, exactly, to the day, in 2024, the mandate of Mr. Zelensky expired. His presidential mandate expired. At the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, people started talking about the elections in Ukraine. We don't hear any news about it now. Will they hold elections or not? We should ask these questions because this is important. No one is talking about it. If they decide to organize these elections, when is it going to happen? And the result is also very important. According to the Ukrainian constitution, the presidents can only be elected 2 times. 5 years each term. If you take the position that President Zelensky prolonged his mandate in a legitimate way, well, 2 years have elapsed anyway. What is he going to do now? Is he going to be elected for 5 more years? No, it's not in accordance with the Constitution. You can only be elected for 2 terms in a row, for 10 years in total. What about the 2 years that he has been in power? What about these last 2 years? There are a lot of questions in this regard. But if it so happens that we sit on the table and are ready to sign the relevant documents, if there's a wish to use peaceful means to put an end to this conflict, and Russia wants to do that, so if that happens, we'll find the people who would sign the relevant documents. It's important that they are willing to do that. It is very important, but it's a question for the lawyers. As far as what I can say to Mr. Zelensky, if we will near the end of the conflict, well, thank God. That's what one would say, that it's gonna be over soon. But of course, lawyers should research it carefully, painstakingly, and I think everyone understands that. So I'd like to reiterate it once again. We can sign these documents only with the people who undoubtedly are legitimate for signing such documents. There are a lot of options. The chairman of the Verkhovnaya Rada, maybe Mr. Zelensky himself, but one should, of course, look what kind of documents these are and what legal consequences they're going to be. Well, the main thing is the desire to do that, but we'll find a way around to send the documents if time comes.
या पीता है नेक्स्ट ही तो पीता है सारा पाकिस्तान पाकिस्तानी टेस्ट है पाकिस्तानी पहचान नेक्स्ट ही तो पीता है सारा पाकिस्तान पीता है पीता है पीता है क्या पीता है नेक्स्ट ही तो पीता है सारा पाकिस्तान.
That Russia will lose on the battlefield. I also remember the then President of the United States. He used to say that the Russian economy was shattered. Was torn to shreds. But you have to look at the real trends, at the real state of affairs, the real state of the economy. The economy of the European Union over the last 3 years has grown by how many percent? Don't even think about it. It's about 3%. What about the Russian economy? It has grown by 10%. It's more than it's a threefold difference. The leading economies, Germany, for example, less than 1%. Last year, the Russian economy grew by 1%, and it continues to grow. Of course, we have some issues when it comes to macroeconomy. The rise in inflation, for example. The financial authorities, the central bank, have made decisions, harsh decisions, to suppress the growth of inflation, to reinvigorate the economic indicators. Those were hard decisions to make. For example, increasing the key interest rate. But these measures bear fruit. Year on year, if we take April, for example, our economy, not fully, but it is moving toward its target indicators. 5.4%. That is the indicator. I think it's a good result already. At the same time, our industry is also showing good results. It is growing. The livelihoods of people are also on the rise. We're talking about 28% growth in livelihoods, thanks to the real growth of salaries. We're talking about 25% growth in real salaries. We are satisfying all the social needs of the Russian citizens. We are increasing the pensions, social benefits, minimum wages. Different measures to support large families. By 2030, we were planning to decrease the number of people receiving less than the living wage. We wanted to decrease this number of people by 7%. But we have already achieved this task. Now it's 6.7%. So, remember I was talking about the quote of Mark Twain. But we see the events, the measures taken by our financial and economic authorities, they bear fruit, but the central bank has increased the key interest rate. Now it has reduced this key rate down to 14.5%. Many people think that it is not enough and we should keep reducing the rate. I'm not going to comment on it because it's going to take a lot of time. I'm always listening to this discussion between the economic bloc of the government and the central bank.
But we are achieving results, and we deliberately made that understanding and mindful of the fact that the volumes of investments to the capital would reduce. With such high interest rates, of course, we will see a decrease of investments, but we did that deliberately. We tried to cool down the economy. One could say that we cooled it too much, or one could say that we didn't do enough, but these were deliberate steps. We don't want inflation to go too high. We don't want dozens of percentages of inflation rates like in some countries. We don't want hyperinflations. We are fighting for the health of the Russian economy. And I would like to draw your attention to another important fact. The national debt, the state debt is 15.6% of our GDP. What about France? They have over 100%, 112% to be more specific, more or less so. But we have 15.6%. All of these gives us reasons to believe that we are on the right track and we feel confident. Reuters Agency, United Kingdom. Mark Van Dyke, please.
President, I've got two questions. The first is on Ukraine. How you rate President Trump's performance in trying to end the conflict in Ukraine, whether he's become distracted by the Iran war, and indeed whether he miscalculated there, perhaps at the cost of pushing forward talks over Ukraine. My second question is about your own political future, Mr. President. You've been running the country now, been in power for 26 years, and whether you plan to stay in office until 2036, I think under the Constitution. And if you don't mind me saying, you look quite fit, whether you feel you have the stamina and the health to go the distance to 2036. Thank you.
Only God knows whether I'll have the health, whether I and you and all gathered here will have the health to live until tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or even solve the tasks that we're faced with and to achieve the goals that we're setting. Only God knows. That's what I'll begin with. It is true that, according to the Constitution, I may get re-elected until 2036, but it is too early, too premature to talk about that, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm being perfectly honest with you. The country is facing numerous, major, acute challenges, and they must be solved. We should be thinking about the future of Russia. That's what we should focus on. That's the first thing. Now, speaking of the Ukrainian track and speaking of what was done by the President of the United States, in his attempts to settle the conflict. I already said, and I believe that there's nothing bad in repeating this. I think that President Trump is sincerely trying to settle the crisis in Ukraine. It is true that, and he has confirmed this too, he said he didn't expect this would be so hard. Perhaps some steps and some things don't seem too complicated, but as soon as you start getting involved into that, when you delve deep into the problem, it turns out that there are too many unknowns in the process, and they matter. So
भूख लगती जाती है।
भूख लगेगी तो स्कूल में पीछे ही रहेगा और पेट भरेगा गंदम से। इसीलिए नेस्ले बुनियाद लाया नया पीने वाला दलिया, जिसमें है गंदम और आयरन की दोहरी गजाइयत। बस पानी में घोलो और पी लो, इससे पेट भरे और गजाइयत भी मिले। नेस्ले बुनियाद का नया पीने वाला दलिया, पेट भरेगा तो आगे बढ़ेगा, सिर्फ 40 रुपए में।
From Nestle.
Tried to give it a global meaning. However, the crisis around Iran is definitely global. Take a look at how the closure of the Strait of Hormuz affected the global economy. That's it. And naturally, the US administration is focusing more on that. However, the proposals that have been made by President Trump, as I said previously, could serve as a foundation for a peace deal. So, answering your question whether the US administration is doing the right thing or not, I think yes, they are on the right track, and the proposals made by the Americans require compromises. And this would serve as a compromise for both parties, for Russia as well. And we agreed to those proposals. It is now up to Ukraine to accept that, and we need to convince them. But I believe that these proposals could serve as a foundation of a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, and could put an end to this conflict.
One follow-up question on Iran. Do you think Russia could play a role in terms of settling that dispute, in particular in relation to the highly enriched uranium?
I think we don't want to impose our services upon anyone, but our proposals are known to the US administration. They are known to our Iranian counterparts and partners. In 2015, Russia did play a positive role, a quite positive role. Back then, we relocated the enriched uranium to the territory of Russia from Iran, and this served as a foundation for the JCPOA. The crisis was resolved, and the then US administration supported such steps. We implemented all of that, and we de-escalated the tensions. So then what happened? There is uranium in the territory of Iran. No one's denying that now. And what happens now? The uranium should be subject to IAEA control, and the entire global community, including the United States and Israel, from this moment on become part of the process of eliminating the highly enriched uranium, because this is under their control. The IAEA controls on paper, but everyone is involved in the IAEA activities. So we have the uranium. Here is the uranium, here is the volume, here is the quantity, here is the control regime, and here is the enrichment process. We have such capacity now too. We could do that and reduce the enrichment rate. But it is up to all the parties to take a decision. If they are willing to find a solution, we can do that. We did that before, and we are ready to do this now. We have good, trusting relations with Iran. This is a friendly state for us. As you know, we are carrying out the Bushehr construction project. We constructed a nuclear power block and we continue the construction work. I believe that the Iranian leadership and the people of Iran trust us. They fully trust us. By the way, in the future, this uranium could be used, well, when we reduce the enrichment, this uranium could be used for peaceful purposes, for the nuclear power and other nuclear projects in Iran under the IAEA control. At least this is one of the ways of finding a solution. And in this sense, Iran, I think, could be satisfied with this solution. And all the other stakeholders, if they have any suspicions, they should also be satisfied with such a resolution. We would present the uranium, it would be openly and transparently relocated and put under control. Then there would be no issue, as I see it. I could be misguided, but I don't see what could be the problem here. Moreover, so originally, this wasn't this year, but originally everyone agreed with this plan. But then the position started to harden, and we said, all right, if you say no, we won't impose ourselves. But our proposals are still there, and we are ready to provide assistance like we did back in 2015. If they say no, that's a no. But we hope that the stakeholders in this conflict would find a different solution. If there is a different solution, we'll be glad and we will welcome it. If they want something from us, we will support any steps aimed at finding a solution and would de-escalate the situation. Mr. President, we've been working for 90 minutes. We could go on for 20 minutes. Could we take a couple more questions? Because the President of Uzbekistan is coming soon. We have a meeting with him. So we have the opening of a nuclear power plant construction in Uzbekistan. I made notes to three colleagues, Martin Romanchik, Vijay Joshi, and Jose Manuel Sanz. Note 3 questions, friends. Please. Martin, please. Mr. President, 2 years ago, you were answering the question of whether Russia was going to attack NATO, and you said this was nonsense. At least that's how it was reported. But now, given the American plans not to deploy intermediate and long-range distance missiles in Germany, and given the emergence of new details regarding the United States relocating its troops from Europe to Asian countries, given all that, there is still talk of Russia possibly attacking the territory of NATO in the future. What do you think about such statements? One should just ask themselves, each and everyone thinking of this should ask themselves, why? Why should Russia do that? The conflict in Ukraine was originated in the coup d'etat in Ukraine and the suppression of all things Russian in Ukraine. The suppression of a major part of the population of Ukraine that did not accept the coup d'etat. This is a Russian-speaking country. Even the so-called nationalists in Ukraine mostly speak Russian at home. But that's not the thing. The thing is, the coup d'etat was followed by domestic events in Ukraine. And at the end of the day, I will not go into detail about the Minsk agreements and so on, but in the end we were forced to support a part of the people of Ukraine living in the territories.
नसीम बाहर आता है, इन ड्राइव खोलता है, नसीम अपनी ऑफर डालता है और ड्राइवर की तरफ से जबरदस्त मेडन ओवर एक शानदार राइड हाजिर होती है नसीम और वो एक चैंपियन की तरह राइड लेता है अपनी मर्जी की राइड लें.
We are all well aware of it. Starting from 1991, they were saying there would be not a step to the east by NATO. It was said by a Secretary General. And it was said by a citizen of Germany. I can't remember the name now, but he used to be Secretary General of NATO. All right, but what does Europe have to do with this? What's the point for us? What is the reason to attack Europe for Russia and to wage war against NATO? This is nonsense. It's more than nonsense. This is a deliberate provocation. Provocative statements meant to establish the illusion of a threat, to force the populations of these countries to spend more money on defense. And as a first step, they are forcing the population to pay for the actions of the regime that seized power in Kiev. I think that's the answer to your question. This is not just nonsense. They are provoking everyone. I am surprised by the fact that part of the population of the European countries, surprisingly enough, believe it. This is ridiculous. It could be funny if it weren't so sad. We keep saying that one of the goals of the operation is the denazification of Ukraine. And everyone kept telling us, what kind of denazification are you talking about? What is denazification? They said that this was some nonsense made up by Russia. Why denazify Ukraine? They asked us. Listen, dear colleagues. Everyone witnessed it, but almost no one talked about it. The reburial of nationalists, of Nazis in Ukraine, those who throughout World War II were killing Jews, Poles and Russians. 1 million people killed in Ukraine. Million of innocent people. And now Ukraine is reburying the remains of these executioners with military honors. They're honoring them as heroes of Ukraine. Poland had a weak reaction. Israel had an even weaker reaction. Everyone's turning a blind eye, shamefully turning a blind eye to that. And the current head of the Kiev regime is doing that. And he's a Jew. Remember, his grandfather was fighting against Nazis. I think he's turning in his grave now. There is the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, the UPA, an absolutely pro-Nazi organization. And they are naming acting regiments of the armed forces of Ukraine in honor of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. I believe that the law says, or is about to say, that propaganda of Nazism is prohibited. But we should draw the attention of the Ukrainian authorities to the fact that it is not enough to put this into law. You should stick to the law. You should implement that in practice. Listen, I understand that the so-called collective West is not willing to see a stronger Russia. They want to use Ukraine to hold back Russia, to make sure we don't defend our national interests so eagerly, to put us into our place and so on. But you must understand the threat that the revival of Nazism poses for everyone. The weapons from Ukraine are crawling all over the world. That's a fact. We have flourishing corruption in Ukraine all throughout the system, deeply rooted in the country. But we see the revival of Nazism too. What will we do about it? The colleagues are saying that Ukraine should be part of the European Union, or an associated member of the EU, or have a different status. All right, they are free to do that. But we have the facts. Something that happened just a few days ago, the reburial of one of the Nazis in Ukraine. He personally killed Roma, Jews, Poles, Russians, million people. These people are reburied with military honors and deadly silence everywhere. I understand that they want to use everything in the fight against Russia. Some countries want so. But this is a threat for everyone. Remember that.
الأحلام الكبيرة تبدأ بخطوات بسيطة، من حجز نطاق إلى بناء موقع إلكتروني وإعداد بريد إلكتروني وتأمين تواجدك على الإنترنت. نحن هنا لدعمك. لا تحتاج لأن تكون خبيرا تقنيا، كل ما تحتاجه هو نقطة انطلاق. علامتك التجارية تبدأ هنا مع GoDaddy.
To get more finances, to get more money for the fight against Russia, to secure the funds for the militarization of their economies.
Mr. President, earlier in the interaction you spoke about Russia's relations with China. You said it was not born yesterday, it has grown fostered over centuries. India has a similar relationship with China, but probably of a different nature. It's a difficult relationship. At the same time, India has a difficult relationship on its western border with Pakistan. I think you see where I'm going with this. Pakistan today is helped by China in military terms. About 80% of Pakistan's military hardware is of Chinese origin. China is also supplying technology, advanced technology to Pakistan, intelligence and military hardware. So this is causing some concern in India. You have very good relations with both China and Pakistan. Is there anything you would like to do at all in ensuring that India's security interests are not compromised? And a related question to that is that I just heard today that the S-400's latest battalion has been delivered to India. A fifth one remains. What is the advanced technology that the 5th battalion will include? And if you can give maybe a definitive timeline on the joint development of Su-57 stealth fighter and the delivery of the Akula class nuclear submarine. Thank you.
Of course, we are aware.
Of course, we are well aware of all the intricacies and, of course, all the issues concerning the border between India and Pakistan. You said that Pakistan is a country that is fully under the control of China. I don't think so. First and foremost, Pakistan is a large country, and it has multifaceted ties with different countries. Of course, for Pakistan, it is very important to take into account the cooperation with the People's Republic of China. But everyone is developing their relations with China because it is the greatest economy in the world in terms of its GDP at PPP. India ranks 3rd. Russia ranks 4th in terms of its GDP at PPP. It's my answer to your French colleague to his question about the Russian economy. China, US, India, and Russia. That's the 4 top countries. We have outpaced the only European countries and Japan in this regard. These are delicate, multifaceted relations between India and China and interfering into them. It's not a good idea. Of course, we interact with our friends in both India and China. I'd like to point out the following. I'm not going to delve into details because this would not be appropriate, but I can tell you with certainty that President Xi and Prime Minister Modi are both trying to resolve all the issues that are of mutual interest, including when it comes to the relations on the border. And I don't have any doubts when it comes to this. As for Russia, we have our own relations with China, with India. You've talked about it. And believe you me, it's no one holds any grudges here. For decades, we have been establishing these relations, and it was happening naturally. The relations between Russia and India do not disturb China. Our relations with China do not disturb India. They do not interfere. But this linkage between the three countries helps everyone. Take BRICS, for example. Do you know where it all started? It all started here in the city of St. Petersburg. At one point, I suggested that leaders of India, China, and your humble servant meet here. And that's how Russia, India, China was established. We had things to talk about, to agree upon. That's exactly what we started doing later on. Then we were joined by Brazil, because Brazil wanted to take part in this three-country format. Then the South Africa.
¿Quieres ser gestor de proyectos, pero no estás seguro de qué habilidades necesitas? El curso de preparación para certificación PMP de Udemy es tu solución. Aprende lo básico de gestión de proyectos y prepárate para el examen de certificación PMP. Gracias a que puedes acceder desde tu celular o computadora, puedes planificar tu aprendizaje según tus actividades. Haz este curso y empieza a aprender.
Of advanced armaments, you know, the mid-range BrahMos missile, both land and sea-based BrahMos missiles, as far as Su-57 goes. At one point, we proposed to our Indian friends to work together on this technology. It's the 5th generation technology. I think it's the best in the world as of now, but back then, our Indian friends said, do it on your own, and then we will see. Maybe we'll join. You know, this aircraft could have been our joint project. We built it independently, but we are ready to work with India in this field to supply these aircraft, to keep developing it. We don't have any issues with it, any limitations. Same goes for air defense systems. But when you start talking about air defense systems, it is important. It is critical to have separate components, but it's even more important to create a system. You have to take into account different altitudes, slowly and fast-moving targets. You have to also take into account that there should be one information system that would be working in real time. It's a high-end task, a complicated task. Now we are working on updating this system. Of course, we still have issues that remain, that have to be solved, but it is unique expertise that no other country does. We do have this expertise, and we're ready to share this technology with our Chinese friends, with our Indian friends, and that's what we are doing. and we'll keep working in this regard.
Eighth agency, please. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to ask a short question. Am I right to understand your answer to the question, are you denying that military hostilities should stop before talks will start? And the second question is concerning Latin America. Throughout the recent months, did you have any contacts with the United States regarding the Cuban issue and what happened in Venezuela? Did you discuss the capture of President Nicolas Maduro? What does Russia say about it? Speaking of the contacts on Cuba, I will tell you directly, a direct answer to your direct question. You asked whether we discussed this with the American administration. Yes, we did. I don't want to make any further comments on that, because we did not send our oil tanker to Cuba. Cuba is a friendly state for us. Throughout decades, we have enjoyed good friendly relations. The US administration is well aware of that. Our contacts with Cuba continue. Now, speaking of stopping the hostilities as a precondition for talks, there is no need to stop hostilities to start the talks. No need. We did have talks already, and hostilities continued as we were having these talks. Here's the issue. Let us be honest and frank. I have already said that there are fundamental factors to the conflict. I talked about it when I answered the question from the American colleague. There's a number of conditions that we're talking about. The Russian forces are on the offensive. Every day, if you look carefully at the events, you will see that the Russian armed forces are taking more and more localities and territories under their own control. 2.5 thousand square kilometers recently have been taken under control of the Russian army. 2,440,000 square kilometers. Under these conditions, Ukraine would prefer that we stop the offensive. Take a look at the Zaporozhye region. We take 1.2 or 1.3 square kilometers every day, or 800 square meters. We go deeper along the front line. Of course we want to stop that, but it would be better to stop the war itself, accepting the compromises that were discussed in Anchorage. That's the better option. Please.
Just a follow-up question to Russia's relationship with its European neighbours. Associated Press reporting has tracked 191 incidents of malign or illegal activity across Europe since 2022. Western officials attribute these to Russia and its proxies, and they include...
Are you talking about Russia's actions in the territory of European countries?
Russia and its proxies. These actions include sabotage, attempted assassination, cyber attacks, and influence operations. Western officials say this is just the tip of the iceberg, and these are the ones that have been tracked or proven. Does this mean that Russia is already waging a war against the West, and does it not risk escalation?
This does not mean anything. This only means one thing. This only means that certain political figures in the West and Western European countries are trying to enact aggressive plans against the Russian Federation. You mentioned certain attempts of cyber attacks, assassination attempts, and so on. And you said that these are only the proven facts, revealed facts. But what are the specific facts? What has been proven? What did one of the prime ministers of the UK say about it? Let me remember the wording. She said, highly likely, I believe. That's what she said. Yes, exactly. All you said is in the highly likely category. Where is the proof? Where are the facts? There is none. They are simply not willing to talk to Russia as an equal partner, but they will have to do that. We're in no hurry. Even if we took 9 pregnant women together, 9 women cannot give birth to a child in 1 month. The situation takes its time, and I think that's where we're moving. I think the situation is maturing slowly, but we're getting there. We are ready. We should stop the mutual accusations.
न्यू पेल रेफ्रिजरेटर्स सिर्फ ऊपर से नहीं अंदर से भी है मॉडर्न, एलिगेंट एंड कूल और इसकी एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी बनाए इसे मोर एफिशिएंट, स्पेशियस एंड इको फ्रेंडली. न्यू पेल रेफ्रिजरेटर वर्क्स एज गुड एज इट लुक्स.
We shall seek options for finding solutions, complicated solutions for complex issues that have to be resolved in the interests of Russia and the European partners. We are ready for it. Thank you very much. Wait. We cannot ignore the women. Please. Thank you very much. I would like to learn your point of view regarding the energy crisis as a consequence of the Iranian crisis, and what is the future of this crisis? Even if we ask the US administration, they wouldn't answer that. I don't think they have the final answer to this question. But there is no doubt that the people of Iran has proven that its interests should be taken into account as such crises are resolved. The people of Iran have shown cohesion and their will to fight. This is a factor that undoubtedly should be taken into account as we find a solution to this crisis. Naturally, this is a politically complicated situation for us, given the fact that over the past decades we have established very good neighborly and friendly relations with the Arab countries and the countries of the Persian Gulf. We maintain contacts with our Iranian friends, and we have always emphasized throughout these contacts, from the very beginning, we have been saying, especially since this took place during the Ramadan, we said that we called upon our Iranian friends to refrain from any military actions against other Islamic countries, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. However, the logic and the dynamics of the events were different. We believe that the efforts of the US administration and the efforts of President Trump and the consistent position of the Iranian spiritual leader aimed at defending the national interests of his country and aimed at seeking compromise. And we do see that both sides are seeking such compromises, and so we hope that this would end up in a positive result. The conflict would be over. If there is anything that Russia could do, we are always ready to provide assistance. If not, we would only welcome the end of the conflict along with everyone. These are mere speculations, saying that Russia is presumably the only stakeholder and the only beneficiary from the rising prices of energy resources. It is true, the prices are rising. We see that and we understand it. However, to a certain extent, our companies do benefit from that. But this is only temporary and short-lived. We are seeking long-term, stable relations with everyone based on mutual interests, and in this case, our interest is ending the conflict as soon as possible. We welcome the fact that, despite certain difficulties, a ceasefire has been established, a certain truce, and we do everything we can to assist in resolving the conflict in general. We maintain contacts with all our friends. Let me repeat, we will do everything we can, and if needed, we will provide our assistance in order to end the conflict. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for this open and frank talk. I wish you all the success.
है नया तलो एक्टिव एनर्जी से भरे खाने, इसीलिए सब बच्चे यही है चाहते।
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Sliding downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange! 145. Oh my god! Decollage. Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct? Yikes. Keep red. Sure. We don't need any more of these.
A decade of design, 5 years of development, and now there's less than 16 hours until launch. Hello everyone, welcome to NSF Live, our weekly news show, live every Sunday. This week we've got some live views of Starbase as we're getting ready for that big shiny rocket in the middle of your screen to finally launch. Alongside me this afternoon is Alex. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing fantastic. I couldn't be more excited.
And we also have Sawyer Rosenstein. Are you getting excited, Sawyer?
Oh, excited is an understatement. While I have 10 seconds before we go all in on Starship, I want to give a shout out to all the NSF fans that came up to me at Yuri's Night Space Coast. Thank you for watching. Thanks for coming up to me. And now, let's Starship away.
Sounds awesome. In the background, we have Kevin and Patrick operating. And of course, my name is Ryan Caton. I'll be your host for today's show. Now, as always on NSF Live, we want your questions. If you've got a question, put it in chat, tag us at NASA Spaceflight, and in the final day, it's not Christmas Eve, it's Starship Orbital Flight Eve, we want to know what you're excited about. Anything you don't know about and you want to know about, now is kind of your final opportunity to ask, because tomorrow, fingers crossed, Alex, this thing should be going.
Indeed, we are very, very close to the launch of a Starship, and you know, it's been a long time coming, many years of following this. And tomorrow, the window opens at 7 a.m. Central. That should be 1200 UTC, and it runs for 2.5 hours. And oh boy, I'm certainly right now like already shaking about that, because it's like, oh my god, less than 16 hours to that historic launch of a Starship. We'll be going live later today, I think, because it's between later today and early tomorrow, depending on the time zone that you are living in, for that live stream. It's gonna be awesome.
And Sawyer, it's been a long time coming. As Alex was saying, everything's kind of pointing to tomorrow. What, in your opinion, how likely do you think that we're actually going to see a launch tomorrow? Because we've all heard the S word, we've all heard the scrub word, but in your opinion, do you think it's actually going to go?
I honestly think we had a really great example just about a month or so ago with Terran 1, where, you know, you get deep into the count, you go for the countdown, and then right before you hit into the terminal portion, you see something that's just not right, so you wait and reset, try again later in the window. I have a feeling it's going to be very similar to that, where we'll see them try for sure. I'm going to guess multiple times within that window, but I think it may take a couple days for them to finally get it off the ground completely. But when it does, it will be exciting.
Now, Alex, we've got a question here from Kurt asking, can the OLM survive a vehicle detonation at/right after launch? What's your opinion on the, how should we say this? The structural capabilities of surviving an impact on stage 0?
Oh boy. For one hand, it looks like it's very strong, very sturdy. You know, it's like it could probably get that damage from an explosion. But again, it is also true that it's the biggest rocket, like the most powerful, most massive, largest, like all the superlatives that you can put on a rocket, basically, right? And so, given that, it should be very, 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 very strong, very, very tough of a launch pad. I'm not sure. My answer is that let's hope not to figure that out ever. Because, man.
Yeah, not a good day. Active Camo Sawyer has a question about the fuel tanks. Are they vacuumed down prior to being filled? Well, one set of tanks being filled with liquid methane and the other set being filled with liquid oxygen.
Not sure exactly what you mean by vacuumed down. I know that they will begin adding the fuel, preparing everything for fueling, start loading the fuel into the two separate tanks for the methane and for the liquid oxygen, and then just before flight, they will fully pressurize them up to flight pressures. So I'm not sure entirely what that means, but hopefully that answers it. Unless I'm missing something, Alex?
Well, so usually when you have it right there on the pad, you sort of keep it at a pressure. The common thing is to vent the tanks to equalize with the atmosphere, and then as you start loading